Thanks. I'm not sure if I heard the last comment that I'm the perfect person for all the questions on the IATI, because I think I'm not. There are others here in the room who are much more experienced than I am, I think, in the whole nitty-gritty of IATI standards, DAC standards, etc. As said, I worked for the past 20 years in the education sector, in education, or in development cooperation. And I'm rather new in this business. I started a year ago for the first time thinking of open data, open government, IATI standards, etc. But talking about transparency, I want to take you to my previous job in the education sector, where I visited I don't know how many schools and I don't know how many countries. And over the past few years, let's say the past 5 to 10 years, when you visit a schoolyard, more and more what you saw entering that schoolyard was a blackboard or a poster. A blackboard with, this is what we got from the ministry, and this is what we are going to do with the money we received. That money received, invested in buildings, materials, textbooks, etc. And it gave the parents the opportunity to hold their teachers account to quality education for their children. At that time, visiting those schools, I never asked myself, but is our money also part on what is on that blackboard? I never asked myself that question. I also never asked myself the question, does the Minister of Education has the same blackboard? Has the same blackboard which says, this is what I got from the Netherlands, this is what I got from the World Bank, this is what I got from NGOs, and this is what I can do with it. And showing the same citizens, the same people, at that schoolyard on what is happening with that money. When the Minister of Finance of, let's say, Mozambique visits our ambassador in Maputo and asks what's the amount of money that the Netherlands is giving to Mozambique, my ambassador, he doesn't know. He knows the small amount that he is managing, but he doesn't know the amount the Netherlands is giving to Mozambique. Each channel, let it be NGO, bilateral, multilateral, etc., it has its own rationale, its own organization model, its own communication. We are realizing that this is becoming a problem. It is a problem for the Minister of Finance of Mozambique, who needs to plan his budget for the coming year. But most of all, it's a problem for the Mozambican citizens, who want to know how much money donors are paying to their government for much needed services, so that they can hold account their government how the money is used. But the lack of transparency is also a problem for us at headquarters, at the Ministry of Development Cooperation, in terms of understanding and reporting results of all Dutch ODA. For the ambassador, in terms of having an overview of Dutch aid flows, and most of all, for our citizens in the Netherlands. People in the Netherlands, and I suppose in many other countries nowadays, are critical about aid. Support is decreasing. Although we still have a 0.7%, it's under pressure. And it's interesting to ask ourselves why that is so. Some people believe that we achieve no results. Others believe aid is not provided effectively. Some even argue that aid has detrimental effects. Big words of waste of money, feeding corruption, exploiting dependency are being used. Certainly, there may be instances that such criticism is justified. We would all welcome the thought that such negative connotations could be avoided. But our reasoning and line of thought to counter criticism on aid is too defensive, too protective or suspected interest behind the giving aid. The more criticism, more defensive and closed the world of aid may become. It is a natural reaction, but the wrong one. We need to show our citizens what we are doing. They want to see for themselves the detail of how their money is being used and what difference it is making. They are in the end the only people who can insist on aid working better. As already said, transparency and accountability have emerged over the past few years as key areas for improving development outcomes and development challenges, cornerstones of aid effectiveness. More and better quality of information on financial flows, projects and programs that are being financed, and results being expected to achieve lead to more effective policy planning, program implementation, and accountability. In adopting the Accra Agenda for Action in 2008, 3 years ago, development partners and partner countries agreed to take a number of actions to improve transparency of aid resources. On the one hand, development partners agreed to publicly disclose regular, detailed, and timely information on volume, allocation, and when available, results of development expenditure. This to enable more accurate budget, accounting, and audit by developing countries. On the other hand, developing countries agreed to facilitate parliamentary oversight by implementing greater transparency in public finance management. In Accra, the International Aid Transparency Initiative, IATI, was launched as a global response and partnership to implement these commitments. IATI aims to make aid more transparent by providing more and better information about aid in a form that is useful and accessible to a wide range of stakeholders. The importance of IATI lies especially in the agreement on an international standard for reporting aid activities. This will provide data for anyone to access and use in a machine-readable format that is common across all donors. And as we heard, also the NGOs are working on that. The objective of IATI was to develop this standard and a code of conduct for aid transparency. In its first year, IATI focused on detailed consultation with stakeholders, especially those in partner countries. The outcome of these consultations confirmed that developing countries' top priority is for timely, up-to-date and reliable information on current and future aid flows. Information that can be used for their own systems and processes. They also want more detailed information on where, when, by whom, how, on what, and in which sectors aid is spent. Many have argued that, but we have already such a standard, which is the OECD DAC CRS, which stands for Credit Reporting System Standard. However, this OECD DAC, although a current global standard, is much more a comprehensive database which provides information about aid spending by DAC donors. It is designed for reporting purposes and doesn't provide timely, regular, and forward-looking data, the time lag is between 12 to 24 months, and also doesn't include more qualitative information. The two approaches, IATI, the IATI standard, and the OECD DAC standard, are in that sense complements to each other. On September 13th, the Netherlands published its aid information on to the IATI registry and delivered on its commitments in the first phase of the IATI standard. We are, I think, the 5th organization who has managed that after the UK, Australia, I think Hewlett and World Bank. The Netherlands are the 5th on that. During this phase, this first phase of IATI, mostly general data on activities has been made available, such as name of activity, general purpose, implementing agency, recipient country, sectoral characteristics. It entails some 3,000 activities, almost all are activities at an annual basis, and data will be updated every 3 months. How we did it. Before the session started, somebody asked me the same question, how we did it, and honestly, I'm still not sure if I can answer that question, but we did it. And I think what was very important in that whole process, and it was mentioned before, was leadership, political leadership. In that sense, we are, I think, very different from what happened in the UK, where it was an overall policy, government policy to introduce and to be transparent. In the Netherlands, I think it was because there were some political leaders who thought and who think it is important. This started already in Accra, where our minister, together with the UK, were the ones who supported IATI strongly. And this was taken up by Dutch Parliament. Last year, after elections, two political parties, and this is very interesting, I think, two political parties, two members of different parties, they joined efforts to support open data. And interesting is, when you look at those parties and where they stand for, one, very much in favor of development cooperation, even for the 0.8 and even to go to the 1% ODA, and the other party very much against it, and they want to reduce it by half. So it is very interesting to say, to look at what are the drivers behind those two parties to join hands and support an initiative like open data. Our State Secretary, he also embraced it and fully supported it. And I think because he understood what open data is about and what the potential is. Secondly, what was favorable for us to succeed in managing the implementation of the first phase was of a more technical reason. 2 years ago, we started with a new internal DAC reporting module, and at that time we already included some IATI elements like 3 months reporting and like the forward-looking part into the design of the system. When implementing IATI this year, we stayed as close as possible to the DAC standard. Almost 80% of our mappings were, as such, already ready. But still, we faced challenges within our organizations to go ahead, to make clear what it is and what it isn't. Is it a website? Is it a new database? What about unaudited data? What about the legal aspects? Staff and managers who are concerned with the poor quality of the data and with all those questions that will come to their desks after we are open. In fact, main challenge is, I think, in the end, organizational and managerial awareness. But as said, We started, we did it, before entering in this whole debate, because I think entering into the debate of why we are doing it, try to make managers aware of it, I think we would never have come so far. I think I have only 3 minutes left. Okay. For the future, there are still several other challenges linked to IATI Phase 1. I will come back to that in 1 minute. Like data mapping, exclusions, documents, results. We are talking a lot about results, but we still haven't our results within our systems, so we cannot be open in that sense about our results because we haven't catched them for the time being. Forward-looking financial information, etc. A lot to be done. We hope that in a few months' time in Busan, after Accra, that donors and all the countries and all others who participate, that they will embrace the transparency agenda. I think it's a huge opportunity. We have come far, I think, with the transparency agenda over the past few years, but still, there's a lot to be done. Only when you look at the percentage of ODA, only from development partners accounting for 33% of ODA have so far implemented or declared to implement the standard, the IATI standard by Busan. So there's a long way to go still. Also, as for the Netherlands, we will continue from next month, that's already next week, I think, yeah. We start our analysis on how to include data that are currently not generically available, such as progress reports, evaluations, strategic plans, forward-looking financial figures, geocoding, and, when possible, results information. A decision on this will be made in February 2012. We are excited that the Dutch NGOs are participating. Rolf is here and can tell much more about it. We had also a very successful open data gathering in May this year. But still, I think also from the NGO community in the Netherlands, there's a lot to be done. I know closing statements. As said, transparency is not a goal in itself. We need to ask ourselves, what do we want to achieve with increased transparency? Is it limited to improve the accountability of our aid? Or is it aimed at better information for Parliament and for the public about what we spend and what we achieve? Transparency will be instrumental to all of these goals. I would personally want to stress the participation part of it. So much talk is about transparency as a form of accountability that the potential to unleash broad participation, to enable co-creation, and to build shared values is often overlooked. I strongly believe, as was mentioned also by the previous speaker, that transparency should support a stronger focus on learning. We need to be more open, what works and what doesn't, so that we can learn. Transparency and open data, in my view, is about being open on what we do, what we achieve, and what we learn. It is about an open search for solutions that work and conditions under which they work. I think I will end over here. I think the important thing for me in this whole business, and I think also for this conference, is not only is going back to that schoolyard. I know it is important for our own citizens, our own taxpayers, to be open, but in the end, I think it is important that we are open on what we are doing, how we are doing it, where we are doing what, for those people at the schoolyard, that they know that they can count for something and that they can hold accountable their politicians as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronald.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Now, the questions and answers. Are there questions?
We'll have
Okay.
to motivate again.
Oh, there's Claudia.
I would like to know what the reaction of your colleagues were when first the idea of IATI came up in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
I can only speak for myself in the sense that last year when I entered into this job, that was my first question. What is IATI? What is it? And as I said, I received so many different answers to that, I thought, simple question. Several thought it was a new database, so they were against it because we have already a database. It's the OECD DUC database. And I think it took us months and months to figure out what it is, and also with the help from IATI. Last year I participated in a technical meeting, in an IATI technical meeting, and together with my boss, and when we returned to the Netherlands, we said, this is not what we are going to do. But in the end, I think we, and with us several colleagues of us, at that time we didn't understand the concept and the idea of open data, of being open to the public, being open to those people at that schoolyard. And we are thinking only in websites and in databases, but not in this basic idea of let the people know what you're doing.
I really wish there were more people out there, more ministries around the world who've grasped the concept and presented it as well as you have. There was a...
So
yes.
there was one question before. Right
on
row.
the outside, perfect.
Yes.
I have a question on taking this example forward to other government ministries. Do you think that the government, the political class, would be interested to take this example of opening up their government data on ODA to other ministries and other agencies, like, for example, export credit agencies, because they are also public flows, which is going to developing countries in the past, and yeah, this is the question. They are also public money.
I didn't understand very well the question. Your question is if other ministries are interested in joining us as well?
Yeah, my question is specific for export credit agency. This is one of the form of other official flows which you report to DAC CRS, but the information is very restrictive in nature and not in the public domain much.
That will be a difficult one. As you know, when you report to the DUC, then it's with one, as I said, with 1 or 2 years almost outdated. But forward-looking export credits, that will be a very difficult one, and I'm not sure if we are going to manage that collectively with other donors as well, because related to competition, etc., between companies, that will be a very difficult one. I think, I'm not sure if you're going to manage that. As it will be difficult within our own ministry to manage the one on forward-looking information at the activity level, because that is already a very tricky one, because you are never sure that by next year you will give A, B, or C amount of money. And you can tell it on a more general level, but at the activity level or at the contract level will also be a very difficult one. So I think forward-looking is still a huge challenge for us, talking about ODA or export credits or whatsoever. Yeah.
There was another question. Please always remember, state your name and organization.
Martina Hennis, Heinrich Böll Foundation. I've got a question. Well, you said one reason for transparency is to show the citizens, to have a kind of justification what you do with the taxpayers' money. And to collect the data about different amounts you're spending in aid. That's not, well, it's not so easy to get these data, but you can do it. But what I'm wondering is, how can you describe what you have achieved with that money? That's the question of aid effectiveness itself, because it's quite easy to think about quantitative measurement, but it's not so easy to have a qualitative measurement.
Yeah.
And well, yeah.
It's true. Look, in a sense, although so many people are excited that the Netherlands has now also it's open about its activities, etc. In a sense, it's relatively outside of all of this, and it's not a big deal what we are publishing right now. It is what we are doing. Activities and what activities are we supporting with how much money in what sector and in what location. It is the quantitative part that we are presenting. Is that such a big deal? We know it is, but from the other hand, it's not. It's what you mentioned. That is interesting. What are we going to achieve with that? And that is what I think the big challenge within, maybe the biggest one, within IATI, is to agree on within the standard on how do we measure results. Because then in the end, you're talking about aid effectiveness. So that's still a long way to go for IATI as well, and all the participants, stakeholders within IATI to come so far. Yeah.
One part of IATI is this data standard, so a common format. How would you describe what makes the difference of this standard? Why is this kind of data standard so important? I know it's a very technical question.
That's a very technical, but the only thing I can answer is that you can talk to each other. That we now can talk with, in the sense, from a database perspective, that we can talk with the UK, and that we can talk, and that you can link it with the World Bank, with NGOs, etc. Something which wasn't possible before. Because we know now, when we talk about Mozambique, we know that we talk about Mozambique and not talking about something else, which is a stupid example, I think. But you know, and before it wasn't clear what we were talking about, and what and I hope with many more, because that is sometimes criticism to IATI as it works only when everybody is participating. I know, but somebody has to start. But I think that is the non-technical answer.
Nicely described. Talk to each other.
Perfect.
Very
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
So basic and so simple, and yet so important and fundamental to have this. We've had two people raise their hands in the meantime. The gentleman in the middle of this section. Yep, right next to you.
Jan Stiefel, Aid Rating Switzerland. I was fascinated by you saying or mentioning that discussing open data, or IATI, I'm not sure, in Netherlands would find one party strictly in favor because they were strictly in favor of development aid and increasing it, and the other one in favor because they were against development cooperation. So probably you're further along the road than we are in Switzerland. I would be interested, what are the main arguments being put forward in the political discussion in a small donor country? Are those who are in favor hoping that they can prove how good the work is that is being done?
Yes.
And those who are against,
Yes.
eager to prove how bad it is? Or are there other arguments?
That's true. That's the
And
answer.
is this discussion actually going on?
Yeah, and but that says a lot about also how powerful open data are, how powerful an instrument it is in this whole debate, and to be open within that debate. As I said, I think we have become too defensive in the debate on criticism to aid. And I think it is an instrument, the openness, open data, in this whole debate. And you saw the party against and the party in favor. They joined hands and said, we need that kind of an instrument to have a much more informed debate on what is happening.
I'm impressed, you're ahead of us.
It's a kind of polder model we are used to in the Netherlands, I think.
Take the last question from the lady right in front.
My name is Andrea Kempf. I'm working at the German Institute for Human Rights in the Department for Development Cooperation. And I wanted to come back to the point on the importance of participation for accountability that you made, which sort of thrilled me because that would be also a human rights perspective, to use accountability for encouraging participation or participation for encouraging accountability. I was wondering whether you already have, I mean, I'm aware that that the process has been there only for a very short time. If you have already some concrete examples from the ground from Dutch Development Cooperation, and if you like how IATI data had been really used to hold governments to account. And I would also be interested in what concrete measures do you take within the ministry and also the development cooperation staff to really familiarize them and to really sort of integrate IATI into the concrete work. I mean, really to operationalize it for conception and for programming of development cooperation.
On the first one, very short, I think after this meeting, yes, there is I think Thomas is here who will present the ACFO example, which is built on Dutch data. I'm not sure what he's going to present, but what we have an agreement with ACFO that they are going to work with our data, because we ourselves, we are not going to build websites or whatsoever. Others are doing that. So that's one example, and I know that for instance, it was presented at the Open Data Camp in the Netherlands that, for instance, several organizations in Kenya, for instance, that they are using at that time UK data within the IATI standard also to make a lot of applications and use it in their daily work as well. On your second question, as I said, I think what we have done over the past few months was close ourselves into a few rooms and rush for it to publish our data. And now that it is open and that people are a little bit understanding what it is, it's now time for us to enter into the debate with managers and staff, etc. What does that mean for your work processes to be open? As I said, if we had turned it around, I think we were still discussing what it is and what it isn't. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.